So hello and welcome back to another episode of Steens for Us. Today we're going to be talking about whether you should buy a classic car through a classic car auction house. We're going to be looking at the positives, the negatives, we're also going to be looking at any hints and tips. And because I've bought this car through a classic car auction, I'll be talking about my experience and relating back to that and giving you examples. So this is my 1985 Mercedes R107 380 SL. Now I purchased this about 2 years ago from Brightwell's auction down in Leominster in Herefordshire. So let's talk about the positive. First positive is that there's lots of choice out there, lots of different auction houses, and generally they vary obviously size, how many cars they have, but there will generally be quite a bit of choice available. Now, it obviously depends which type of car you wanted. If you wanted a British convertible car, that's quite a broad spectrum, so it's probably going to be 5 or 6 cars that might pique your interest. Obviously, you have to something a little more niche or particular model. Particularly something a bit rarer. Obviously, you might have to wait a little bit. Just keep checking the auction listings, and then you obviously, when you see a car, you might go down there and it might not be for you. So you do have to bear that in mind. But generally, in auction, there's quite a bit of choice, as long as you've got a relatively broad scale of what you're looking for. Now, auction houses are a third party, so they sort of will sit between the buyer and the seller. Now, the seller has asked the auction house to sell it on their behalf, so they will generally make sure that they do a good advert with a good description, lots of videos, hopefully a video, and lots of pictures as well. So obviously this can vary. I'm sure we've all seen private sale adverts where we see a close-up of the headlight as the main image or whatever. We've all seen very bad photography done. Generally auction houses are a bit more switched on than that, and they will produce some very good images. They might even do a video as well, and as I said, they'll probably have a good description on there as well. So the final positive is that buying a car for auction is very exciting. There's this thing about will you buy it, won't you buy it, how much will it go for, are there other people bidding on the car as well, and it's quite exciting. Even though I purchased it through an online auction, I still find it very exciting to do that. Obviously though, flip that on its head and you can get carried away at auction, get auction fever. You can just, particularly if it's in the room as well, I think in the room auctions are worse, you can just keep sticking your hand up, sticking your hand up, end up paying way more than the car's worth or way more than you've budgeted to. So generally auction houses will charge between 10 and 15% commission. So if you were to buy a car for £10,000, let's say, and the commission was at 10%, your commission will be £1,000. So you got your £10,000 plus your commission, you'd have to pay overall £11,000. Now you've also got to bear in mind that you can't test drive any of the cars down at the auction. I've never known an auction that let you test drive a car before you actually make a bid on it, and that was the same with this car. And I'll talk about the process that I actually went through in a moment with this car. You also got to bear in mind that you're buying through a third party. You don't actually ever speak to the seller of the cars. The buyer, you never actually directly speak to the seller. It always go through the auction house, even if you're negotiating after you've purchased the car. Maybe the bid isn't quite high enough or whatever, or it doesn't meet the reserve, whatever it might be, you'll always go for the auction house. So whereas actually if you go and buy a car privately, you will be speaking directly to the seller. You might be able to build up a bit of a better picture of the car's history and the car's life. So let's move on to the hint and tips, and I'm actually going to talk you through the process that I went through when I actually purchased this car. So I originally wanted a classic car. I wanted actually something British. I'd already had two Mercs at the time, so I actually wanted something different. But this one popped on the website, and I said, no, I'm going to have a look at that. So before I even went down to the auction house to view this car, I went through the website and the listing on the website. Thankfully, there was quite a nice description on there, nice big chunky description. There were lots of photos. I think there's around 40 photos showing some nice shots of the car, but also nice in-depth shots of the car, so I could sort of see if there was any little issues with the car. There was also a video of the car moving around the auction site, so obviously I knew that this car started and drove, so I knew I'd be able to take it home basically and get it home. I also did my own research in terms of looking at the MOT history. I went on there and I found that actually the car had about a 5-year stint without an MOT, so I'm going to presume that it was parked up for about 5 years. It was MOT'd in 2017. It then ran out of MOT in 2018, yeah, the year after, wouldn't it? Took me a long time to think about that. And for about 5 years, it didn't have an MOT until the beginning of 2023. Now, I bought this one in August 2023, so obviously someone had put it for an MOT a few months before. So I then had a quick type. I just typed in the reg of the car into Google, and it brought up two auction listings. One of which was in 2015, so I'm presuming someone's bought it, and then for whatever reason, we could have sold it between 2015 and 2018 again, but I couldn't find the evidence of that. So I'm presuming that someone bought it only a few years, then for whatever reason parked it up in a garage in Bristol. It then went through an auction house as a bit of a project car, and then found out someone actually bought the car in the beginning of 2023. Obviously, they've gone through then the sort of recommissioning process of it and got the car running and driving and in through an MOT. A few months later, they've decided to sell the car for whatever reason, and that's where I came in. So next up was the viewing day. I went down to the viewing day, which happened on my birthday. I had a couple of cars to look at. There was another SL, there's a white one there on the day, which didn't get a very good vibe about, to be honest. I didn't overly like it that much. A little bit older car, it needed a bit more work. So it wasn't quite my cup of tea, to be honest. So I remember walking in, and this car was right at the front of the auction hall that they had. And it was pretty much the first car you went in and you saw for the big doors opened. And you walked in, and this car was pretty much there, and it was getting quite a lot of attention while I was around there. So I had a thorough walk around the car. I spent about 10-15 minutes going through the car, having a look on the inside as well. I got talking to one of the auction team down there, and they even started the car up for me just so I could have a little listen to it to see if the engine sounded okay. I was listening to the engine at the front. We had the bonnet open, listening to the engine. My partner was around the back having a quick look at the exhaust to see if there was any sort of blue smoke or any nasties coming out of there. Thankfully there wasn't, so that was a good sign. I then went over to the auction office, and they very kindly let me have a look at the paperwork. I went in, I told them that number, and they handed me a stack of paperwork and said, if we want to go over to the little side room there, you can have a little look, and there's a table and chairs. And I could sit there and flip through the paperwork. Now, this car didn't have full service history, never was advertised full service history. That's absolutely fine. But it had plenty of bills from about the mid-90s, I think. So I lost a bit of the early service history. But there was a lot of bills going up to about 2017 and a few bills from 2023 when it was obviously being recommissioned and putting an MOT back on it. So I then had to walk away from this car, which is very hard now. Brightwell's operate using an online auction, so that was on the Wednesday. So I went to view on the Monday, they had a viewing on the Tuesday as well, and then you can actually bid on the Wednesday evening. Now, I was the successful bidder of this car, however, we were about £3,000 below the estimate. So I knew when I got the top bid, I knew the car wasn't going to go for that amount of money. It would be an absolute steal if it did, but I also wouldn't feel right about it myself. I think the car was worth a bit more than, I think it's about £10,300, I think the top bid was on this car. So I wouldn't have felt right with that. But anyway, next day we had a bit of toing and froing, and I had my budget for this car. And even with the toing and froing, obviously plus the commission as well, we were still about £200-300 over my budget. And I actually at one point turned around and said, no, I've got my budget. This is my budget. That's what I'm prepared to pay. And I actually walked away. And I got a phone call about 20 minutes later saying, actually, we'll fiddle about with the commission a little bit. And yeah, we'll get something to you. Actually, we'll lower the commission, take a bit of commission off, and that then brings it down to below my budget. So in the end, we managed to get a nice deal sorted and again a car for my price. That's the good price that I wanted, and I kept it in budget. But I did have to be quite firm and not get carried away. You've got to remember there will be other auctions, there will be other cars as well. So you can tell it's winter, it's about half rain, and when it's getting quite dark, I've just flipped on the lights. So now I was the owner of this SL, I have to go in and collect it. Now, obviously, I haven't test driven this car. There's no warranty with it. It's sold as seen. So what happened on the drive home? Well, it was absolutely fine the way home. I didn't really spot any immediate issues. There was an issue with the odometer. That wasn't working, but that was put in the description, so I knew about that. One of the issues that wasn't put in the description, though, I got home, I parked this car up just the other side of there, and I was going to have to shove some cars around to get it parked up where it's going to be overnight. And I went to start the car back up to move it around and it wouldn't start. It really struggled to start. And turns out this car had a hot start issue, which I didn't know about. So yes, definitely buyer beware on that front. Other than that, I think the car was fairly accurately described. I was quite happy with the description, I was quite happy with the photos they put on. I'd obviously done my own research and I'd booked up a little bit more of a story about the history of this car. And overall, I was really happy with the purchase of this car. I was really happy with the price I got it from. It has needed a little bit of work, and at every classic car, there's always a bit more work than you expect. There's always other things that I find when people start digging around in them. But that's to be expected with a car that's nearly 40 years old. So overall, would I recommend to you to actually go out and buy a classic car for a classic car auction? Well, yes, I would. I had a really positive experience. I thought the process of buying it was quite exciting. Yes, there were things that happened I didn't quite expect and that weren't listed, but you do have to take those on the chin. And thankfully, it was nothing absolutely huge, nothing disastrous. So I would recommend it, but please, please, please do your own research. Try and find out as much about the cars as you can. Also try and go and see the car on the day. Try and get them to start up if possible. I know it's not always possible, but try and also see the paperwork as well if you can again. So just please, 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 if you are going to buy a car from your car, go and do your own research. Go and do a little bit of homework and just try and get as much knowledge about the car and as much background of the car as you possibly can. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's videos. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the comments below. I'll do my very best to answer them. And also love to hear your experiences from buying a car from a classic car auction. Please let me know if you had a positive experience or even a negative experience. All sort of opinions are welcome here. I've had a positive experience. That doesn't necessarily mean everybody else has. And I think it's important that we also get those sort of not so good experiences out in the open as well, just so people are aware that sometimes it can go wrong. Unfortunately, hopefully it won't, and I hope it doesn't go wrong if anybody, you guys out there, actually go and buy a car. But yeah, it's nice to get a bit of a balance of both. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. It's going to be goodbye from me, goodbye from the SL, and we'll see again very soon. Goodbye.